I appreciate the comments of my colleague and the opportunity for us to work together to help shine a light on this moment of great atrocity in the world. And a great deal of what we're calling for is for America to do more to shine a light on it, and for the world to work together to not just shine a light on it, but to end it. To end it and proceed to have as much healing as can possibly take place. So thank you very much to my colleague for Indiana for being deeply in this conversation. It is a real pleasure working on the Foreign Relations Committee together. We must address this situation. According to a report from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, government forces and Buddhist extremists in Burma have carried out, quote, a well-organized and coordinated and systematic campaign of human rights violations against the Muslim Rohingya, with a strategy to, quote, instill deep and widespread fear and trauma, physical, emotional, and psychological, among the Rohingya people. This comes after the Commissioner's statement that this security operation, as they referred to it in Burma, was, and I quote again, a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. Now, as we ponder international relations, we see from time to time somewhere in the world that one group will, I guess, respond to deep tribal impulses and prejudices and seek to wipe out another group. This is horrific moments in history, and we've seen this movie, this situation occur time and time again. And the world has said, after such incidences, they've said, never again, meaning we will respond when we see this happening. We will apply great pressure. We will coordinate with the world to make sure it stops, because such effort to wipe out another ethnic group is so unacceptable. It is such a crime against humanity. But here we are, it's happening right now in Burma. It's happening with a Buddhist nation. And we normally associate the Buddhist religion with a main emphasis on peaceful conduct. And yet here this tribal impulse, these deep prejudices are so powerful that they've overcome whatever peaceful impulse there is and resulted in a massive effort to wipe out the Rohingya people. And in the course, there have been a massive number of rapes. There have been children killed right in front of their mothers. There have been villages surrounded by soldiers, and then the villages' huts set on fire, and as people run, they've been shot as they flee. This is about as inhuman as it can get. Something close to 300 villages burned to the ground. By some estimates, 3,000 civilians killed. And now we have a count that a few weeks ago we were talking about 400,000 refugees pouring into Bangladesh, but now the number is 600,000 Rohingya refugees, roughly half the Rohingyas that live in Burma. And those refugees include 300,000 children. Think about the type of trauma those children have just experienced and the challenges that they will have regaining a foundation to thrive. And then there are those who are internally displaced inside of Burma, who have been driven out of their villages but haven't been able to make their way to Bangladesh. So that is the challenge we face. And there is an area of Bangladesh called Cox's Bazar, and that's where these two main refugee camps are. And international aid groups are working to get as many resources they can quickly into this area so that people do not starve, so that medical wounds can be addressed. But there is still a significant lack of food, a lack of clean water, a lack of sanitary bath and toilet facilities. That is a condition that is ripe for spreading disease like cholera. When I was home in Oregon, I met with a group of Rohingyas who were refugees that came and settled in Oregon, and they have a very personal connection, as you can imagine, to what is happening. And some of them have distant relatives that are still there. Some have immediate family members. They don't know exactly what's happened to everyone in the middle of this chaos. We also heard about villages that didn't get burned down, but where the military was blockading people from leaving the village to go to the fields to secure food, and blocking them from leaving the fields and going back into the village. So probably responding to international outrage over villages being burned, resorting to essentially a strategy of starving out the villages to drive people away. Can you imagine being trapped in one of those villages, knowing what's happened to village after village after village, knowing that the children have been slaughtered, that the women have been raped and often killed, that men have been shot? Just the desperation is enormous. I heard firsthand accounts of the conditions from refugees from Reza, who had just returned from a 2-week trip to visit them. He told powerful and moving stories about children who had been brutalized, children who had been separated from their parents, children who may possibly now be orphans because it's not clear if the parents are still alive, or if alive, where they are. The world collectively has not done enough. The community of nations have not done enough to address this unspeakable brutality. Bangladesh should be complimented for accepting these refugees fleeing for their lives. They have been cooperative, and it is a challenge for them, and we should acknowledge that, and we should continue to ask them to do everything possible to give the UN Commissioner on Refugees and the various aid organizations full opportunity, full access, full authority to be in and assist those in these refugee camps. Now, our nation, the United States and the United Kingdom and the United Nations have condemned the actions of the Burmese, and that is certainly appropriate. But we haven't done enough. We have not taken the steps that my colleague referred to strengthen sanctions or coordinate the international countries to all weigh in. The only thing that is going to make a real difference here is pressure on the Burmese military. They are in charge. We can criticize the civilian government in Burma, and many have, and they've been unable to stop what's going on, and sometimes often reflect the prejudices that contributed to this. But it's the military that makes the decisions. We had testimony from the State Department yesterday in which one of the officials used the term, well, vigilantes, what the vigilantes are doing in this oppression. And that's not the right term to use. This is not uncoordinated action. This is action coordinated through the military decision-making process. You don't surround camps. You don't have significant planning that goes into it and have it just be vigilantes. Vigilantes may be involved, but they are not the driving force. They might be assisting the soldiers, and in some cases acting their own, but this is a coordinated act of the military of Burma, and it is important that the community of nations convey that to the military, that how unacceptable this is, and that there will be significant consequences. My colleague has referred to the fact that in this situation, no military sales should be made to such a military. And that's important, but that takes a conversation among nations, and the United States needs to be deeply engaged in this. Now, there's a lot of international fundraising going on. There was a conference held on Monday, a donors conference to assist the refugees. It raised about $200 million, a little more, in new funds. That's about $400 per refugee. That's not going to be nearly enough to provide for shelter and care in the situation, the complete lack of access to fields or farming or support. It's going to take more than that, and we should be involved in working with the United Nations and UNICEF and World Health and UNHCR, High Commissioner for Refugees, and the World Food Program to step up and assist. And I certainly believe that it would be very helpful to have President Trump take this issue on and speak from the heart of our nation to this dark and evil deed that's happening, and that we reject it and that we will partner with the rest of the world to end it. I do feel that there is a history in which we have helped lead the nation in these situations. We haven't always been there. I know that President Clinton said that the biggest regret of his administration is he didn't respond quickly in Central Africa when the Tutsi and the Hutu went to battle against each other, slaughtering each other with machetes. This is a chance for us to really respond aggressively, to have that moral clarity, to exercise that leadership in the world. So I join my colleague in calling for such action, for more assistance with the aid to both Burma and Bangladesh, for the moral clarity to take actions that pressure the Burmese military in a significant, compelling way, and to provide so much assistance in the right of return, the ability of these individuals to be able to return to their villages. Traditionally, this group has been denied citizenship. And early on, we heard from the civilian government in Burma, well, we'll let them come back if they show that they're citizens. Well, one, they've never been granted citizenship. Second of all, and after a horrific situation like this, if they did have papers, they wouldn't have papers. They've been burned along with the villages. There needs to be a change in attitude, a change of heart among the Burmese civilian leadership and certainly among the military to lead an effort in the tradition, the peaceful tradition of the Buddhist tradition of embracing this diversity and returning these people to their land. Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan now serves as chairman of the Advisory Commission of the Rakhine State, and he and his team have laid out a report with very specific actions that will help end the cycle of radicalization and the cycle of violence, and we need to work to try to make sure that those things are implemented. To show the repressive governments in the rest of the world that the world will not stand, the world will respond and respond aggressively in a coordinated, forceful way when ethnic cleansing occurs. That is the best deterrent we could have for future atrocities. So I thank again my colleague for being in this dialogue, in this support, to shine this light, to take and compel more forceful action. And like him, I look forward to meeting with the ambassador from Burma later today. Thank you, Mr. President.